Good afternoon. Would you mind please introducing yourself and telling us a little bit about your background and expertise?
Yeah, for sure. So I am Sarah Hawley. I'm the founder of a company called Growmotely, which was born out of another company of mine called Grow My Team. So Grow My Team started as a remote recruitment company back in 2014, which I guess to wind back from there as well was a company that was born out of me wanting to turn all of my companies remote and not knowing how to source staff. So I created my own remote recruitment company. And then in 2019, we basically started working on Growmotely, which is a remote staffing platform, essentially connecting people all over the world with companies all over the world. And when the pandemic happened, our timing was impeccable. So we've been working really hard on that ever since.
How has the current pandemic put a spotlight on working remotely versus working in an office setting?
As I said, we were starting working on this idea back in 2019, and my hypothesis as an entrepreneur at that point was over the next 10 years, the world will start to understand that working remotely is possible. And we'll start to see, us trend more in that direction, but it'll probably take 10 years. And then obviously March-ish last year in the United States, at least, we all went into lockdown and very quickly realized the lockdown was going to be more than 2 weeks. And essentially, the entire world was thrown into this remote work. And in this context, it has been work from home because we were in lockdown at the same time. But yeah, like everyone pretty much experienced it and realized, wow, like it's possible. We can get our work done. We can actually be more effective. I think we learned new sides of ourselves and all of the things that I had been experiencing since 2014. I very quickly saw the business owners around me and professionals that I know kind of come to understand the benefits and all of that. But I think what we see now is, which I anticipated, is that people don't really, by and large, want to go back to a full-time office environment. Of course, some people do, some people don't, but I think we've done our own surveys and we see them everywhere. And, it's pretty overwhelming, the amount of people that do want to stay working remotely.
Now that many of us have already been working remotely, do you think there will be a shift in the corporate culture to include remote work?
I mean, basically what we're seeing a lot of is there are some companies that are just like, okay, we're now fully remote, we get it, we're there, that's what we're going to do. And then there are the other companies that are like, nope, we're fully come back to the office, what have you. And I think we are already starting to see people changing careers, looking for new opportunities because they don't want to go back. And once again, I'll say it, some people do, I know that. And then there is this hybrid stuff evolving, which is going to be interesting. I think it feels like it makes sense to kind of do some kind of hybrid thing, but something interesting that I experienced a long time ago was when I first went remote, I had my core team in an office and then we started hiring people in other parts of the world. So it ended up that we sort of had this core team and then we had this remote team, and having the two actually wasn't super conducive for our culture. It actually worked a lot better once we all went fully remote. So in my experience, sort of either all in the office or all remote tends to work better. However, in really large organizations where they still have a huge, they might be based in a certain city and they've got 1,000 people that still live in that city, having some kind of flexible option where people can come and go from the office, might make sense. And I think what we'll see a lot more of is use of co-working spaces, but also other types of spaces evolving to be more conducive to work. So cafes and restaurants and bars and even hotels and places where people congregate, maybe shopping malls, I don't know, where people tend to congregate will have areas that are more conducive for people to sit and work for a number of hours or all day even. I think that's what we'll start to see as well.
One of the big questions that we keep running into is, do you believe that the remote work trend was just a result of the pandemic, or do you think that it's here to stay?
I think it's here to stay. I think as millennials quickly become the largest part of the workforce in the next generation, they're the ones largely saying, oh no, I don't want to go back to an office. Like, I love to travel. I love to have my freedom. The other thing that I think, and I kind of mentioned it earlier in the chat, was, it's not like work from home, the way that it's looked the last year is not how I spent the last 7 years. The last 7 years were work from anywhere. So I would be traveling, I would be in a cafe, I could be at a friend's house, I could be in a co-working space, and it was really enjoyable. Working when you're locked up in your house and you can't go out, like that's not necessarily enjoyable. Also, you might have other people like kids and family members and pets that, you know, make it challenging. But I think what really people, and we've sort of started to see as the world in different parts has opened up and people have had more flexibility to, you know, go to a cafe or whatever it might be, that's really where the gold is, this freedom to work in an environment that is best suited for you as an individual so that you can contribute your best to the company. But, you know, we've done a lot of surveys and I stay on top of the research and stuff, and it's just a big trend that we're seeing.
Do you think remote employees are as productive as their counterparts working in the office? And do you think there's a correlation to productivity and being in the office?
I would offer that a lot of the challenge as a leader and a manager is to know how to actually understand what my team are doing and that they are being productive, and kind of understand how I can show up as a manager and a leader in that scenario, in the remote scenario. So there's a leap of faith, there's a letting go, there's a kind of trusting people to organize and manage themselves and get their outcomes met. And I would be looking at the outcomes versus, I think when we're in an office environment, it can be very easy to look at what we can see. Like, is someone turning up on time? Are they taking too long of a lunch break? And we kind of get distracted by this stuff rather than, you know, is their work being done at a high quality by the time it needs to be done? And that actually becomes more apparent in a remote environment. And look, the honest truth is some employees are not suited to that type of environment. Some employees really need to be more micromanaged. Like, they actually kind of want to show up and be told, like, oh, this is the next thing for you to do today. This is the next thing for you to do today. And one thing I really kind of advocate for is understanding the culture of the organization and the culture of the people that work there and how they all like to work and show up, and then making the decision based on that.
So a lot of the companies that we've heard from are concerned about information security with their remote employees. What would your advice be to those businesses that are concerned that maybe their information security isn't as strong with remote work?
I used to run financial planning businesses, so I understand that risk. And we were fully remote. And what I would do is focus on ensuring my team members only had access to the information that they needed to do their job. So not kind of giving everyone access to things that were irrelevant to them that could lead to challenge later if someone was unethical or did the wrong thing. Using things like password protection software, password sharing software like LastPass. There's a bunch of them where you can put the company's passwords in and give people access to that. And, you know, at some point or another as well, it was like, well, there is a little bit of risk here. We really can't do anything to close that gap. And that's just the way it is. But does an office close the gap? I don't know, unless you're actually taking people's cell phones off them and putting cameras on them, watching them, and then having someone watch those cameras that you also need to trust and check. Like, it is hard. But I think it depends how sensitive that information really is and what the risk is for the business, and then making those decisions once again as an individual business.
What are some of the technologies that you've seen that have helped to facilitate this move towards remote working?
What's interesting is that most companies were probably already set up to technically be remote. We've had sort of the cloud, the internet for a long enough time now that it's pretty rare that we are using like local servers and things like that these days. So most businesses probably were already set up to go remote, which is why it actually worked pretty quickly. People were able to just not come into the office on Monday once the announcement was made or whatever it was, and be like, okay, I can still log into all my emails, all my things, and do my work. From my perspective, the biggest issue to overcome that technology helps solve in a remote context is communication. So how do we replicate the communication rhythms and channels and natural flow that occur in our office online? Replicating all of that kind of organic, natural communication flow online. We use a software called Basecamp, which is really effective for uploading documents, for sharing, collaborating on files. And it also has like a chat function, so you can just ping someone, as they say, and be like, hey, can you help me with this or what have you. you need to train yourself a little habit to actually communicate what you're doing. And it feels a bit awkward at first, like to write a note at the end of the day of like, oh, these are some of the things I worked on today or what have you. And it can feel a bit like, am I reporting in? And it's not so much a report, it's just keeping people across because you haven't had all that natural flow of conversation.
So we actually got in touch with each other when I was doing a story about clean desk policies, and you said that you find that to be counterintuitive. So I'm just curious, why is that?
Yeah, that one got up in my grill a little bit. Well, essentially what I've learned over the years of remote work and this, it's kind of empowerment, empowering people to work in an environment, in a style, in a way that is most suited to them, even in terms of time of day. Like some people really are night owls and they love that's their most creative, effective, productive time of day. And some people, it's like myself, it's early in the morning. You know, I could get up at 5 or 6 a.m. and work for 3 hours and it'll be fire compared to what I'll get done the rest of the day. And when I understood that, I was like, wow, why are we making people go into one room, one environment, one building all together and operate in the same way during the same hours every day? It is counterintuitive to productivity, actually. And to go on from there, it's like some people are more kind of messier. Some people like a little bit of organized chaos around them, so to speak. And other people like things to be spotless. And once again, you put people all in the same environment and it's like you all have to just cope with this environment in the same way to thrive in this environment. And it's just not reality.
So lastly, one of the things that we've been seeing as the pandemic seems to be winding down is a lot of employees are wanting to stay remote while some companies are really wanting to bring people back. So I guess what would your advice be to those employees that want to stay remote, and what would your advice be to those companies that want to bring people back?
I mean, to the employees, I would say, if this is not the right fit for you, believe in yourself that you can find the organization that is the right fit. And I would say that irrespective of an office or anything, like if you are not 100% happy, or like at least in the 90 percentile happy in the work that you do, in the organization that you work for, go keep looking, find something else. You know, in 2021, we can work for companies all over the world. So there's bound to be the organization out there that does something that you care about, you know, shows up in a way that thrives with your natural constitution. So go believe that you'll be able to find it and go looking for it. I think it's absolutely out there. And for the companies, it's almost the same thing. Like if you are dead set on being in the office and you really believe that is the best culture for you, that is fine. Except that you'll probably lose a bunch of people, and be cool with that and look for the people that want to work in an office. And that might be the actual answer.